My father ruined my 26th birthday by calling me a backup plan, but the real knife in my back was the $50,000 of debt he hid in my name. I didn't cry. I audited him, filed a fraud report, and watched his empire crumble. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The fever was burning behind my eyes, a dull, throbbing heat that made the candlelight in the Italian restaurant smear into long, blurry streaks. I shouldn't have been out of bed. My doctor had been explicit about rest after the severe bout of pneumonia that had laid me low for the last 2 weeks, leaving my lungs feeling like they were stuffed with wet cotton and my energy reserves completely depleted. But it was my 26th birthday, and my father, Marcus, had insisted. He didn't take no for an answer, especially not when he had decided to play the role of the benevolent patriarch for the evening. "You can't spend your birthday in pajamas, Alina," he had said over the phone, his voice booming with that charismatic authority that usually made people crumble. "I've reserved the private table at Luca's. Just family. We need to celebrate you." So I was there, sitting on a plush leather chair that felt too hard against my aching joints, sipping water because even the smell of wine made my stomach churn. My brother, Lucas, was to my left, scrolling incessantly on his phone, looking bored. He was 2 years younger than me, but carried himself with the unearned confidence of a prince in waiting. And across from me sat Dad, looking every bit the successful real estate mogul he pretended to be, tan skin, a suit that cost more than my first car, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I was weak, physically and emotionally. The illness had stripped away my usual defenses. I just wanted to go home, curl up with my cat, and sleep for a week. But I stayed because I wanted to believe that, for once, this dinner was actually about me. "Attention, everyone," Dad announced, tapping a spoon against his wine glass. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the low hum of the restaurant. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He loved an audience, even if it was just me, Lucas, and a passing waiter. "To Alina," he began, raising his glass of expensive Barolo. 26 years old. "You know, when I look at my children, I see the future of our legacy." I managed a weak smile. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted my water glass. "Alina," he continued, his eyes glazing over me before settling admiringly on Lucas, "you are the steady one. The reliable one, you're safe, like a good savings bond." My smile faltered. "And Lucas," he gestured to my brother, who didn't even look up from his screen, "Lucas is the risk-taker, the visionary, the star that burns bright. He's the one who's going to take the family name to the moon." Dad laughed, a hearty, performative sound. "Every kingdom needs a steward to manage the books while the king conquers, right? Alina, you are my perfect backup plan. If Lucas's ventures hit a snag, I always know you're there to pick up the pieces." To the backup plan. The air left my lungs, and it wasn't the pneumonia this time. The backup plan. "To the backup plan," Lucas muttered, finally smirking as he clinked his glass against Dad's. I sat frozen. The heat in my face shifted from fever to pure humiliation. I was a forensic accountant. I had graduated top of my class. I worked for one of the city's most prestigious firms investigating complex financial crimes. And to him, I was just the safety net for when his golden child fell off the tightrope. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, my voice raspy and small. "Oh, lighten up, Ellie," he waved a hand dismissively, sitting back down. "It's a compliment. Stability is useful." My phone buzzed violently against the table surface, startling me. I grabbed it, eager for a distraction, perhaps a birthday text from my best friend Sarah. It wasn't a text. It was an urgent security alert from my bank's credit monitoring app. Alert: new credit line opened. Institution: Venn Capital. Limit: $50,000. Status: approved. I blinked, trying to clear the fever haze. I hadn't applied for a loan. I hadn't applied for anything. I tapped the notification, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The details populated the screen. The application had been submitted 3 days ago while I was delirious with a high fever in the hospital. And then I saw the co-applicant email listed in the fine print details, visible only because I had premium monitoring. mvanserialty@gmail.com. My father's business email. I looked up from the glowing screen. Dad was laughing at something Lucas had said, tearing off a piece of crusty bread. He looked so comfortable, so guiltless. He had used my social security number, my excellent credit score, and my name to secure $50,000 while I was lying in a hospital bed hooked up to an IV. He toasted to me being the backup plan because he had already cashed me in. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away, leaving me in a vacuum of ringing silence. The only sound I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. I stared at the man across the table, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who had walked me to the bus stop, and I saw a stranger. A thief in a tailored suit. "Elena, you look pale," Dad said, pausing with a forkful of pasta halfway to his mouth. "Don't tell me you're going to faint. It's a celebration." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. I needed to leave. If I stayed, I was going to scream, and I didn't have the breath or the strength for the confrontation this deserved. Not yet. Not while I was shaking this badly. I started, my voice cracking. I cleared my throat and tried again. "I need to go. I think the fever is coming back." "We haven't even ordered dessert," Lucas complained, rolling his eyes. "Dad ordered the tiramisu." "I have to go," I said, louder this time. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Happy birthday to me." Fine, Dad sighed, looking more annoyed than concerned. "Go rest. I'll handle the bill, as always." The irony of that statement nearly made me vomit. "You'll handle the bill? With whose money, Dad?" I stumbled out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. The valet took one look at my ashen face and ran to get my car. As I sat in the driver's seat, shivering uncontrollably, I didn't drive home immediately. I pulled into a parking lot 2 blocks away and turned on the interior light. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type, but I needed to be sure. I pulled up the full credit report. There it was, a business line of credit, personally guaranteed by me. The funds had been dispersed yesterday. Destination account ending in 4490. I knew that account number. I had seen it on checks Dad had left on the counter at home. It was his primary business operating account. I drove home in a daze. My apartment was dark and quiet. I collapsed onto the sofa, still in my coat, and just stared at the ceiling. The physical pain of the pneumonia was now a dull background noise compared to the sharp, twisting agony in my chest. He stole from me. He didn't ask. He didn't borrow. He stole. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to see if he would slip up. "Hello." "Elena," his voice was smooth, devoid of the annoyance from earlier. "Just wanted to make sure you made it home. You were acting very strange at dinner. Very dramatic." "I'm sick, Dad," I said, closing my eyes. "You're always something," he muttered, then cleared his throat. "Listen, since I paid for dinner, I was hoping you could do a little favor for the family. Lucas has this incredible opportunity for a flip property downtown. Guaranteed returns. We just need a little bridge capital to get the permits moving." "I don't have any money, Dad," I said, my voice flat. "I've been out of work for 2 weeks unpaid." Right, he said quickly, too quickly. "Well, your credit is good, though. I was thinking maybe we could look into a small loan together." My stomach dropped. He was testing me. He was trying to get retroactive permission for the crime he had already committed, just in case I got a notification. He wanted to be able to say, "Oh, we talked about this, remember?" "A loan?" I asked, playing dumb. "I can't take on debt right now, Dad. I'm looking to buy a house next year." "Don't be selfish, Elena." His tone hardened instantly. "This is for the family. For Lucas, you know he needs a win. You're the backup plan, remember? It's your job to help." "I can't do it, Dad." "You're ungrateful," he snapped. "After everything I've done for you, raised you, clothed you, you can't even sign a piece of paper to help your brother." "I'm going to sleep, Dad," I said. "Fine, be that way. We'll figure it out without you," he scoffed. "We don't need you." He hung up. I sat there in the silence, the phone warm in my hand. "We'll figure it out without you." He was lying. He had already dragged me into it. He thought he was so clever, manipulating his sick daughter, thinking I was just a passive saver, a quiet girl who did puzzles and filed taxes. He thought he was dealing with a daughter who simply nodded and obeyed. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a saver. I was a forensic accountant. I hunted people who hid money for a living. I tracked down embezzlers, fraudsters, and corporate thieves who were 10 times smarter than Marcus Vance. I wiped a tear from my cheek and opened my laptop. IW. Asn't going to sleep. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the dynamic of the Vance family. For as long as I can remember, I have been buying my father's affection, and the price has always been inflated. Mom died when I was 12 and Lucas was 10. Dad fell apart, or so it seemed. I stepped up. I became the little mother. I cooked dinner, I made sure Lucas did his homework, I ironed Dad's shirts. I thought if I was perfect, if I was useful, the sadness in the house would go away. As we got older, the dynamic shifted, but the roles remained cement-hard. Lucas became the project. He was charming, handsome, and utterly incapable of finishing anything he started. He dropped out of college twice. He started a t-shirt brand that failed, a dropshipping business that got sued, and a podcast that nobody listened to. Every time he failed, Dad was there with a checkbook and a pat on the back. "He's a visionary," Dad would say. "Geniuses are often misunderstood." And me, I was the utility. I put myself through college on scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. Dad never paid a cent for my tuition. "You're smart, you'll figure it out," he'd told me. When I graduated summa cum laude, he didn't come to the ceremony because Lucas had a minor fender bender in the next town over and needed emotional support. I became a CPA, then specialized in forensics. I built a career on precision, on truth, and yet I still did Dad's taxes every year for free. I balanced his chaotic personal checkbook. I loaned him $2,000 last Christmas for gifts that turned out to be a new watch for himself and a gaming console for Lucas. I got a scarf. I did it all because I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at Lucas, with pride. But I realized now, sitting in the blue light of my laptop screen, that he never would. To Marcus Vance, people were assets or liabilities. Lucas was a speculative asset he was gambling on. I was a fixed-income bond he could liquidate whenever he needed cash. I pulled up a dossier on my father. It's a habit of mine, I verify everyone. But I had never looked too deeply at him because I was afraid of what I would find. Now, I took the gloves off. Marcus Vance styled himself as a developer. In reality, he was a middleman who sold options on land he didn't own. He wore Italian suits but drove a leased Mercedes that was 3 months behind on payments. He was all surface, no depth, a shark with veneers. The $50,000 he had stolen in my name wasn't for a bridge loan. I traced the initial movement of funds. He had transferred the money from the Venn Capital credit line into his business account, and then immediately, within 10 minutes, wired it to a luxury car dealership in Miami. He hadn't invested in a property. He had bought Lucas a car. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Lucas had wrecked his car 2 weeks ago. Dad had promised to fix it. Instead, he had taken out a line of credit in my name, ruining my debt-to-income ratio, jeopardizing my ability to buy a home, just to buy his golden boy a replacement vehicle so he wouldn't have to take the bus. And the antagonist of this story wasn't just a desperate man making a mistake. It was a calculated predator. I looked at the timestamps. He had applied for the loan at 2, 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. At that exact moment, I had been texting him from the ER, telling him I was being admitted for breathing difficulties. He had texted back, "Stay strong, kiddo." He had used the distraction of my hospitalization to bypass the security checks, likely using my old laptop that I had left at his house months ago, which still had my passwords cached. He knew I wouldn't be checking my email. He knew I was incapacitated. He preyed on my vulnerability. A cold resolve settled over me, chilling me deeper than the fever ever could. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a crime scene. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to clean up the mess. I was going to document it. I reached for my phone and dialed the one person I knew would help me bury him. "Sarah," I said when she answered, my voice steady for the first time all night. "I need you to open a file. Pro bono? No, I'm going to pay you. I want this done by the book." "Elena, it's midnight. What's going on?" "My father just stole 50 grand from me," I said, my eyes fixed on the transaction log. "And I'm going to send him to prison." The next morning, the sun glared through my blinds with an intensity that felt personal. My fever had broken, leaving me in that strange, hollowed-out state of clarity that often follows a serious illness. I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt cold, like I had been tempered in ice. I sat at my kitchen table, a place where I usually drank coffee and read the news, but today it was a war room. Across from me sat Sarah, my best friend since sophomore year of college and a ruthless litigator who specialized in family law and financial disputes. She had come over immediately after her morning court appearance, still wearing her charcoal suit, her expression grave as she reviewed the printouts I had prepared. "Elena," Sarah said, putting down the stack of papers. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "I want you to listen to me very carefully. I know you're angry, I know you're hurt, but we need to be crystal clear about what this means." "I'm listening," I said, my voice steady. I had spent the last 6 hours compiling evidence. My laptop was open, displaying the metadata of the loan application. "If we proceed with this," Sarah gestured to the identity theft affidavit from the Federal Trade Commission, "you are not just disputing a charge. You are accusing Marcus Vance of a felony. Depending on the jurisdiction and the amount, and 50 grand is well above the threshold, this is grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft. If the DA picks this up, he could go to prison. Real prison, Elena, not white-collar weekend camp." She looked me in the eye, searching for hesitation. "He is your father. Once we file this police report to freeze the debt, the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. You can't unarrest him later because you feel guilty." I looked down at the paperwork. I thought about the dinner, the toast, the backup plan. I thought about the years of being the responsible one, which was just a polite way of saying the one we can exploit. "He didn't hesitate, Sarah," I said softly. "He did this while I was in a hospital bed. He used my social security number like a coupon code. If I pay this off, or even just ignore it, I'm accepting that my role in this life is to be his victim." I picked up a pen. The ink was black, permanent. "I'm not a backup plan," I whispered. "I'm the plaintiff." I signed the affidavit with a flourish that felt like slicing a cord. "Okay," Sarah said, her demeanor shifting instantly from concerned friend to shark attorney. She snapped her briefcase shut. "Then let's burn it down. What do you have?" "I have everything," I said, turning my laptop toward her. "I'm a forensic accountant, Sarah. He forgot that he's not the only one who knows how to follow the money." I walked her through what I had found between 2:00 a.m. and dawn. It was a trail of breadcrumbs so sloppy it was insulting. "Step 1, the application," I said, pointing to the screen. He applied online through Venn Capital's automated portal. He used his home IP address. That's rookie mistake number 1. He didn't even use a VPN. I've already pinged the geolocation. It maps directly to his home router. "Good," Sarah noted, taking notes on her legal pad. "Direct digital footprint." "Step 2, the verification," I continued, navigating to a folder of PDFs. The lender required proof of income. He uploaded 3 pay stubs. Look at them. Sarah squinted at the screen. They look like your company's stubs. They look like them, I corrected. But look at the font on the year-to-date earnings. It's Arial. Our payroll software uses Calibri, and look at the deductions. They're calculated at the 2022 tax rate, not the current year. He forged these, Sarah. He likely took an old stub I left at the house years ago and photoshopped the dates and amounts to make it look like I make double my actual salary to qualify for the higher limit. Sarah let out a low whistle. Forgery of financial documents. That adds another 5 years to the potential sentence. And finally, I said, my chest tightening as I clicked on the final file, the destination. I showed her the transfer logs. Venn Capital to Vance Development LLC. Vance Development LLC to Prestige Motors of Miami. I called Prestige Motors this morning at 9:00 a.m. sharp, pretending to be his executive assistant, I said, my voice dropping. I asked to confirm the delivery details for the vehicle purchase made yesterday. They were very helpful. Let me guess, Sarah said grimly. A 2024 Range Rover Sport, I said. Jet black for Lucas Vance. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. A Range Rover. My brother, who didn't have a job, who lived in the pool house, was driving a car that cost more than my student loans, bought with credit stolen from my future. He didn't even try to hide it, Sarah murmured. He's so arrogant he thinks you'll never check. He thinks I'm the safety net, I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. He thinks I'll just absorb the debt to avoid a scene. He's banking on my silence. Where are you going? Sarah asked, standing up with me. I have to go to the police station to file the report officially, I said. But first, I'm going to his house. I need to see it. I need to see the car. I need to look him in the eye one last time before the police knock on his door. Elena, that's dangerous. Emotionally, I mean, Sarah warned. I need to know he has no remorse, I said, grabbing my keys. I need to be absolutely sure, because once I press that button, I lose my family. The drive to my father's estate in the suburbs was a blur of autumn leaves and white-knuckled rage. The house was a sprawling, McMansion-style monstrosity that Dad was constantly renovating but never finishing. It was a perfect metaphor for him, impressive from the curb, but structurally unsound and leveraged to the hilt. As I pulled into the long, paved driveway, my stomach turned over. There it was. Parked right in front of the fountain, glistening in the afternoon sun, was the Range Rover. It was sleek, black, and aggressive. Lucas was standing next to it, holding a garden hose, spraying down the tires. He was wearing sunglasses and a grin that looked like it had been plastered on. I parked my 10-year-old sedan next to this monument to theft and stepped out. The air smelled of wet pavement and expensive car wax. Ellie, Lucas shouted over the spray of the water, waving enthusiastically. Look who's alive. Dad said you were on death's door last night. I walked toward him, my boots crunching on the gravel. Nice car, Lucas. Right, he beamed, shutting off the hose. He patted the hood affectionately. Dad finally came through, said it was a signing bonus for the new development deal we're working on. It drives like a dream. Heated seats, heads-up display, the works. A signing bonus. My blood boiled. The lie was so effortless. Is Dad inside? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Yeah, in the study. He's on a call. Hey, you want a ride later? We can go grab lunch, my treat. Well, Dad's treat. He laughed. Maybe later, I said, walking past him. I couldn't look at him anymore. He was an accomplice, even if he was too stupid to realize it. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he didn't care where the money came from, as long as the keys ended up in his hand. I entered the house. It was quiet, save for the muffled sound of Dad's voice booming from his office down the hall. I walked toward the open door. Marcus was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, feet propped up, phone pressed to his ear. He looked like the king of his domain. No, the liquidity is there, he was saying into the phone, laughing. I just moved some funds around. We're good to break ground next month. Trust me, Bill. When have I ever let you down? He looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. His expression shifted from business charm to mild surprise. He held up a finger to me, finished his call with a few more empty promises, and hung up. Elena, a surprise visit, he smiled, swinging his legs down. Feeling better, you look. Intense. I didn't sit down. I stood in the center of the Persian rug, clutching my purse. I saw the car, Dad. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes tightened just a fraction. Ah, yes. Lucas needed reliable transportation for the new project. You know how image is everything in this business. We have to look successful to be successful. You bought it with a line of credit from Venn Capital, I said. The room went very quiet. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to grow louder. Dad sighed, leaning back in his chair. He didn't look guilty. He looked disappointed that he had to have this conversation. I was going to tell you, he said smoothly. I just didn't want to stress you out while you were sick. It's a temporary measure, a bridge loan. I'll pay it off before the first statement even hits your mailbox. You won't pay a dime of interest, Ellie, I promise. You forged my signature, I said. You used my social security number. You created fake pay stubs. He waved a hand dismissively. Paperwork. It's all just red tape. Look, I needed to move fast. The interest rates were going up and the deal on the car was expiring. I did what a CEO does, I executed. You committed fraud, I stated, my voice raising an octave. You stole my identity. Oh, stop it, he snapped, his facade cracking. He stood up, slamming his hand on the desk. Don't use those words with me. I am your father. Everything you have, everything you are, is because of me. I raised you. I fed you. And now you're going to lecture me about using a little bit of credit that's just sitting there doing nothing. It's not your credit, I shouted back. It's mine. I worked for it. I built it. And who built you? He roared, coming around the desk. He loomed over me, using his size to intimidate, a tactic that had worked when I was 12. You're being hysterical, just like your mother used to be. It's $50,000, Elena. I make deals worth 10 times that before breakfast. Do you really think I'm going to default on a piddling car loan? You're behind on the mortgage, Dad, I said, dropping the first truth bomb. I checked the county clerk records. You haven't paid property tax in 2 years. You're drowning. His face went purple. You've been spying on me. I've been auditing you, I corrected, and I know about the investors for the Lakeside project that doesn't exist. I know you're moving money from Peter to pay Paul. And now, you've dragged me into your Ponzi scheme. You ungrateful little brat, he hissed, pointing a finger in my face. I should have known. You were always jealous of Lucas, jealous of his spark. You're just a bean counter, a boring, miserable little bean counter. You should be honored to help this family. Honored to be the backup plan, I asked, tears stinging my eyes, not from sadness, but from pure, white-hot anger. Yes, he shouted. That's your utility. That's what you're for. You hold the net while the stars perform. He had said it. He had confirmed everything I feared. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was a resource. A line item on a balance sheet to be depreciated until value was 0. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm not Annette, Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. I'm the auditor. I reached into my bag and pulled out a copy of the identity theft affidavit I had signed an hour ago. I slammed it onto his desk. What is this? He asked, staring at the paper. That is a copy of the police report I'm filing this afternoon, I said. I'm reporting the loan as fraudulent. I'm reporting the identity theft. Venn Capital will receive a copy within the hour. He looked at the paper, then at me. He laughed, a dry, nervous sound. You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't arrest your own father. It would ruin me, the scandal alone. You ruined yourself, I said, turning toward the door. You have 24 hours to return the car and close the account. If you don't, the police will do it for you. Elena, he screamed after me. If you walk out that door, you are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead. I didn't look back. I walked out of the study, past the confused look of my brother who was just walking in, and out the front door. I got into my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. But as I drove away, watching the mansion shrink in my rearview mirror, I didn't feel grief. I felt lighter. The fever was gone. I thought the threat would be enough. I thought showing him the precipice would make him back down. I was wrong. Predators don't back down when they are cornered, they attack. By the time I got back to my apartment, my phone was exploding. First, it was the text messages. Dozens of them, not from Dad, but from the flying monkeys, his enablers. "Aunt Linda, your father called me in tears. He says you're having a mental breakdown. Please call me, honey. We can find you a good therapist. Don't do anything rash." "Uncle Jerry, Elena, I heard about the dispute. Money causes stress, but family is forever. Don't involve the authorities. It's untoward. Apologize to your father." He had spun the narrative immediately. To them, I wasn't the victim of fraud. I was the unstable, hysterical daughter who was attacking her poor, hardworking father over a misunderstanding. He was gaslighting the entire extended family to pressure me into silence. Then came the threat. An email landed in my inbox from a lawyer I knew, Dad's old golf buddy, Mr. Henderson. It was a cease and desist letter, claiming that I had illegally accessed proprietary business records, my investigation, and threatening to sue me for defamation if I spoke to the police. It was a bluff, a weak, desperate bluff, but it showed me that Marcus wasn't going to fold. He was going to fight dirty. I called Sarah. "File it," I said. "File the report. Submit the evidence to Venn Capital. Pull the trigger." "Consider it done," Sarah said. "Lock your doors, Alina. It's going to get ugly." For the next 3 days, I went into professional mode. I took a leave of absence from work, citing a family legal emergency, and turned my apartment into a command center. If he wanted to claim I was crazy, I was going to be the most documented, meticulous, crazy person he had ever met. I dug deeper. I needed to know why he was so desperate for $50,000. The car was a luxury, yes, but Marcus usually leased his cars. Why buy this one outright with cash from a loan? I followed the money trail of his Vance Development accounts using public records and lien searches. I found the smoking gun in a lawsuit filed in a neighboring county 3 months ago. Marcus had taken a deposit from a private investor, a man named Victor K., who ran a shady import-export business for a condo development that didn't exist. Victor was suing for his money back. The amount? $45,000. The pieces clicked into place with a terrifying snap. The $50,000 wasn't just for Lucas's car. He had used the credit line to pay off Victor to avoid getting his legs broken, and then likely convinced the dealership to give him the car on a lease he couldn't afford, pocketing the cash difference. Or perhaps he was robbing Peter to pay Paul in a complex shell game I was only just beginning to see. Wait, I looked closer at the transfer to the dealership. It was for the full amount. He had bought the car. So where was Victor's money coming from? I checked Lucas's credit. I had his social security number from when I helped him with student loans years ago. My heart stopped. There was a second loan, a home equity line of credit on the family house, taken out in Lucas's name, co-signed by me. Another forgery. He hadn't just used me for the car. He had used my name to co-sign a high-risk loan for Lucas to pay off his dangerous debts. He was burning both of his children to keep himself warm. My phone rang. It wasn't family. It was Venn Capital's fraud department. "Ms. Vance, this is Detective Miller from the fraud unit. We received your affidavit and the supporting evidence from your attorney. We've frozen the account." "Thank you," I said, exhaling. "However," the detective continued, "given the amount and the interstate nature of the wire transfer to the dealership, this falls under federal jurisdiction. We are opening a criminal investigation. We need you to come down and give a formal statement. We also need to know, is the co-applicant, Marcus Vance, aware of this investigation?" "He is," I said. Okay, we are issuing a warrant for the seizure of the assets purchased with the fraudulent funds. That means the vehicle. Do it, I said. 2 hours later, the second confrontation happened, but not in person. I was at the police station, finishing my statement, when my phone began to vibrate violently on the metal table. Dad calling. I looked at Detective Miller, he nodded. Answer it, put it on speaker. I tapped the green button. What have you done? Dad's scream was so loud it distorted the speaker. He sounded like a wounded animal. The police are here, they are towing the car. In front of the neighbors, Alina, in front of everyone. I told you I would, I said calmly, glancing at the detective who was recording the call. You spiteful, jealous witch, he shrieked. Lucas is crying, you've humiliated him, they're treating me like a criminal. You are a criminal, Dad, I said. You forged my signature. And I know about the loan in Lucas's name too. I know about the co-signing. I gave that to the detective too. There was a strangled silence on the other end. Then, a voice I barely recognized, low, terrified, and venomous. You fix this, he hissed. You call them off right now. You tell them it was a misunderstanding. You tell them you gave me permission verbally and you just forgot. If you don't, I will ruin you. I will tell your firm you're unstable. I will tell everyone. You have the right to remain silent, Marcus, I interrupted him, my voice breaking just slightly as the tears finally fell. I suggest you use it. I hung up. Detective Miller stopped the recording. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect. We have enough for an arrest warrant, Ms. Vance. With that call, that's witness intimidation. We're going to pick him up tonight. I nodded, feeling a heavy weight settle in my stomach. It wasn't guilt. It was grief. I was mourning the father I wished I had, while sending the one I actually had to jail. Do it, I said again. But the story wasn't over. The climax was yet to come, because Marcus Vance wasn't going to go quietly. He had one final play, a public spectacle planned for the weekend, his annual charity gala where he planned to schmooze new investors, and he had expected me to be there to balance the books. Instead, I was going to be the one to close them, forever. Most people would hide after being arrested for fraud. Most people would lock their doors, call a crisis PR team, and stay out of the public eye. But Marcus Vance was not most people. He was a narcissist, and for him, the show had to go on. He had made bail within 6 hours of being booked, likely by leveraging some last, hidden asset, or calling in a favor from a loan shark he hadn't burned yet. The very next evening was the Vance Foundation annual charity gala. It was a black tie event held at the city's historic botanical gardens, ostensibly to raise money for urban development scholarships, but in reality, it was Dad's primary hunting ground for new investors. I hadn't planned on going. I wanted to be done. I wanted to wash my hands of the toxic sludge that was my family legacy. But then I got a text from Lucas. Lucas, he's doing the speech. He's telling everyone you're mentally ill. He's telling the investors that the police report was a prank by a disturbed daughter. You need to know. That was the spark. He wasn't just stealing my money anymore, he was stealing my reputation. He was destroying my professional credibility to save his own skin. If he painted me as mentally unstable, my testimony in court would be weakened, and my career as a forensic accountant, a job that relies entirely on trust and sanity, would be over. I put on my dress. It wasn't the pastel, modest thing Dad usually made me wear to these events to look like the good daughter. It was a sharp, structural black gown that looked like armor. I grabbed my clutch, which contained nothing but my phone and a USB drive. I arrived at the gardens just as the sun was setting. The event was in full swing. Waiters circulated with champagne, a string quartet played Mozart. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and expensive perfume. I saw him immediately. Dad was holding court near the fountain, a glass of scotch in hand, looking remarkably composed for a man facing federal charges. He was surrounded by a cluster of wealthy local businessmen, his marks. Lucas stood off to the side, looking pale and shaken, wearing a tuxedo that seemed to hang off his frame. I walked straight toward them. The crowd parted. People whispered. They had heard the rumors. They wanted to see the disturbed daughter. "Elena," Dad called out when he saw me. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went dead. "I didn't think you'd be well enough to join us. Everyone, this is my daughter. She's having a difficult time right now." The circle of men looked at me with pity. "I'm feeling much better, Marcus," I said, my voice projecting clearly over the music. I didn't call him Dad. "That's good," he said, stepping forward to block me from the group. "Why don't you go get a drink? Lucas, take your sister to the bar." "I'm not here for a drink," I said, holding my ground. "I'm here to correct the record." "Now, Elena," Dad's voice dropped to a warning growl. "Don't make a scene. You're embarrassing yourself." "You told them I was sick," I said, addressing the investors directly. "You told them the fraud investigation was a misunderstanding caused by my mental state." "It is," Dad laughed nervously, looking around. "She's been under a lot of stress. Hallucinations even, it's tragic." "Is the arrest warrant a hallucination?" I asked. The chatter in the immediate vicinity stopped. The string quartet seemed to fade into the background. "There is no warrant," Dad shouted, losing his cool. "It was a clerical error, a mistake by the bank." "And the loan in Lucas's name?" I turned to my brother. "Lucas, did you know he took out a $100,000 home equity line on the lake house in your name? He forged your signature too, Lucas. He used you to pay off the gambling debts." Lucas looked up, his eyes wide. "What? No, the lake house is in a trust." "Not anymore," I said, pulling out my phone. I tapped the screen and cast the image to the large smart TV screen set up behind the bar, which had been cycling through photos of Dad's philanthropy. The screen flickered and then displayed the document. The notarized loan agreement. Lucas's signature, clearly forged in Dad's looping handwriting, and the disbursement log showing the money going to an offshore gambling site. The crowd gasped. It was irrefutable. It was up there in 4K resolution. "He didn't just steal from me," I said, turning back to the room. "He stole from his own son. He stole from his investors. That condo project you're all here to support, the land was foreclosed on 6 months ago. He's selling you air." Dad lunged for me. "Turn it off, turn it off." But he never reached me. Lucas stepped in between us. For the first time in his life, my brother didn't look like a boy. He looked like a man who had just watched his idol shatter into a million jagged pieces. He put a hand on Dad's chest and shoved him back. Hard. "Don't touch her," Lucas said, his voice trembling with rage. "Is it true? Did you mortgage the lake house? That was Mom's house." "Lucas, listen to me," Dad pleaded, sweating now, the charm completely dissolved. "It's a liquidity play. I was going to pay it back next week. I just needed time." "You used us," Lucas whispered. "You called her the backup plan. What am I? The piggy bank." "You're ungrateful," Dad screamed, realizing he had lost the room. "Both of you, I built this family. I am the king." "You're a fraud, Marcus," I said quietly, "and the king is naked." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. The police weren't done with him. I had called Detective Miller on the way over and told him about the violation of his bail conditions. Dad was trying to secure new fraudulent investments at the party. The flashing blue lights reflected off the botanical garden glass. The guests began to scatter, clutching their purses and their checkbooks, realizing they had almost been swindled. Dad looked around, wild-eyed. He looked at his investors turning their backs. He looked at Lucas, who was staring at him with pure disgust. He looked at me. "You did this," he spat. "No," I said, watching the officers march through the garden gate. "You did this. I just audited the books." The downfall of Marcus Vance was not a slow decline. It was a cliff dive. The arrest at the gala made the front page of the local papers. The headline read, "Real estate mogul arrested for multi-million-dollar family fraud." Because I had been so meticulous with my evidence, the case was a slam dunk for the prosecution. They didn't even need to go to trial. Confronted with the forged pay stubs, the IP logs, the wire transfers, and the testimony of his own children, Marcus's lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of aggravated identity theft, and 1 count of bank fraud. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. I didn't go to the sentencing. I read about it in the transcript Sarah sent me. Apparently, he gave a speech asking for leniency, blaming his crimes on market pressures, and trying to provide for his family. The judge wasn't impressed. He called Dad's actions predatory and devoid of parental instinct. The aftermath was messy, as these things always are. The government seized everything. The mansion, the cars, including the Range Rover, the remaining furniture, and even his expensive watch collection were auctioned off to pay back the creditors. Lucas took it the hardest. He lost his illusion of a safety net. He was 24, broke, and homeless, with a credit score that had been torched by his own father. But the betrayal woke him up. 3 months after the sentencing, I was sitting in my new apartment, a modest place, but one I had bought with my own money, protected by locks and credit freezes that would rival Fort Knox. There was a knock at the door. It was Lucas. He looked different. He was working construction now, hauling drywall. His hands were rough, his face tan from the sun, not a tanning bed. He wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore. "Hey," he said, standing awkwardly in the hallway. I brought you this." He held out a check. It was for $500. "What is this?" I asked. "It's not much," he said, looking at his boots. "But I'm going to pay you back for the legal fees. I know you paid Sarah for everything. I'm going to pay my half. It might take me 5 years, but I'll do it." I looked at the check. It was wrinkled and written in cheap blue ink. It was the most valuable thing he had ever given me. "You don't have to," I said. "I do," he looked up, his eyes clear. "You saved me, Elle. He was going to bury me in debt, and I was too stupid to see it. I thought I was the special one, but I was just another mark." I stepped aside and opened the door. "Come in, Lucas. I just made coffee." We sat on my balcony, watching the city skyline. For the first time, we weren't competitors for a narcissist's attention. We were just siblings, survivors of a shipwreck, sitting on the shore. "He wrote to me," Lucas said after a while, "from prison." "Did he?" "Yeah, asked me to put money on his commissary account. Said the food is terrible." "What did you do?" I asked, sipping my coffee. Lucas smiled, a genuine, albeit tired smile. I wrote back. I told him I couldn't. I told him I'm saving up for a backup plan. I laughed and it felt good. It felt like oxygen. "Good for you," I said. "My credit is fixed. My name is clear. I still work as a forensic accountant, but now, when I see a case of elder abuse or family fraud, I fight a little harder. I dig a little deeper. I learned that you can't choose your family, but you can choose your boundaries. I am not a backup plan. I am not a safety net. I am the architect of my own life, and for the first time in 26 years, the foundation is solid rock." I kept the check Lucas gave me. I framed it. It hangs in my office as a reminder: the truth is expensive, but freedom is priceless.